At 1:47, at 59 degrees north in the Baltic Sea, the container ship Baltic Spirit suddenly went dark. Its AIS transponder switched off. This 15,000-ton steel behemoth entered stealth mode, just 800 meters from Estonian territorial waters. Immediately after, a supply ship approached and began pumping high-pressure fuel through a 30.5-centimeter diameter hose under the cover of darkness. Above, like a US Navy P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft recorded the entire operation with its long-range infrared camera. Strangely, the crew had received strict orders to maintain their position, under no circumstances to intervene or fire, even as the ship finished its last cubic meters of fuel, preparing for departure. Why would a force as powerful as the United States agree to stand idly by, watching smugglers operate right before its eyes? Even more chillingly, a Russian Kilo-class submarine, or nicknamed the Black Hole of the Ocean, lay in ambush directly beneath the supply ship, its torpedo tubes already open. They waited, ready to fire on any target daring to cross their path. The situation seemed entirely under Russia's control. Welcome to Strategic Horizon, where we dissect the boldest military strategies. Today we dive into a secret operation in the Baltic Sea that nearly triggered a major crisis. But what Moscow didn't realize was that the US Navy had activated an unprecedented combat scenario, a deception designed to turn the situation around unexpectedly. Let's go back to 047. 1 hour earlier, the P-8 Poseidon's detection of the Kilo submarine was no accident. Even before the Baltic Spirit switched off its AIS, a network of fiber optic sensors laid on the seabed had registered an extremely faint pressure fluctuation, or a telltale sign of a diesel-electric engine shifting into silent running mode. To counter this stealth, the P-8 had deployed a series of multi-static sonar buoys. These buoys worked in concert to create narrow digital sound beams, capable of penetrating the electromagnetic jamming emanating from Kaliningrad. The result sent a shockwave through NATO command centres. The Kilo was motionless, on maximum alert, with its torpedo tubes 1 and 2 open. Simultaneously, Russia had deployed mobile acoustic decoys, creating dozens of phantom targets moving along the bottom of the Gulf of Finland, making any targeting solution on the real submarine impossible. On the surface, Russia's choice of refueling location, exactly 800 meters from Estonian territorial waters, was a shrewd grey zone calculation. This distance was close enough to benefit from Nassau Island as a natural breakwater, stabilizing the extremely sensitive, high-pressure pumping process. And a single external impact causing a pressure leak would transform the sea into an environmental catastrophe with 840 tons of diesel. Russia gambled that NATO would never dare to fire, fearing the ecological consequences and the legal barriers of international waters. Moscow was entirely confident. It controlled the surface, the electromagnetic spectrum, and the escalation ladder. They believed NATO had only two choices: stand idly by and observe, or provoke a disaster. But they could never have imagined the third scenario, which the US Navy had discreetly activated, capable of turning Russia's entire defense system into a pile of harmless scrap metal in an instant. If you're ready to discover how the US Navy was about to teach its adversary a lesson, stay with us. At 2:15, with the countdown showing only 25 minutes remaining, the deadly silence on the sea was suddenly broken. A brief code from the US Navy's 6th Fleet was sent to Estonian command. Action authorized immediate movement. Without waiting, the Estonian patrol boat Raju accelerated through the waves, heading straight for the 800-meter limit. Weapons ready. Above, commando helicopters began descending to an altitude of 100 meters, casting powerful searchlights directly onto the Baltic Spirit's deck. A lightning-fast boarding attempt was commencing in the dead of night. However, as expected, Russia was prepared for this scenario. As soon as the Raju entered the 1,200-meter range, the Baltic Spirit's podlet K system immediately switched to extreme power, focused jamming mode. All of the Raju's radar screens and radio communication equipment were instantly reduced to white noise. Not content with that, the Russian ship's water cannons were activated, simultaneously projecting powerful jets that formed a thick wall of steam, or completely neutralizing the infrared observation capabilities of the helicopter above. Underwater, the Kilo submarine delivered the decisive blow, a wire-guided underwater drone was launched from a torpedo tube, speeding at approximately 74 kilometers per hour. Its ultra-thin fiber optic cable emitted no electromagnetic signal, making it completely invisible to Estonian sensors. The drone approached the Raju from behind and deployed an ultra-strong polymer net. In a matter of seconds, when the Estonian patrol boat's engine stopped with a screeching sound, the engineer frantically sounded the alarm. Propeller fouled, engine overload. The 900-ton Estonian vessel suddenly became an inert steel hulk, drifting aimlessly before the enemy's eyes. Russia had succeeded in neutralizing the NATO intervention force without using a single gram of explosives. Amidst the shock of the Estonian officers, a new American order echoed over the communication system, cold and decisive. Withdraw all units. Return to base immediately. Estonia was ordered to repatriate all its remaining forces near the shoreline. In the sky, the American P-8 Poseidon maintained its orbit, silently observing the entire scene without any supporting action. For Russia, this was proof of NATO's cowardice in the face of underwater firepower. But the Americans' unsettling silence amidst their allies' defeat concealed a far more terrifying truth. A much larger chess game was being orchestrated, and all actions until now were merely a trap. At 2:40, after the Estonian patrol boat had been neutralized and forced to retreat, the scene fell back into a deadly silence. Moscow sent no radio messages, maintaining absolute electromagnetic silence to protect the Baltic Spirit's civilian identity. However, both below the surface and above, physical counterattacks began with breathtaking intensity. From the Kaliningrad base, and the Sterogustchi-class missile frigate, the Submarine, suddenly accelerated to approximately 52 kilometers per hour, heading directly for the refueling coordinates. This ship did not turn on its navigation lights and emitted no radio warnings. The only message it sent was its fire control radar, which directly locked onto the American P-8 Poseidon. On the American pilot's combat screen, the radar lock signal flashed red continuously, a silent but powerful threat. And any attempt at aerial intervention would be met with an immediate anti-aircraft missile response. At the same moment, Russian Su-30SM fighters appeared from behind Naisar Island. They dived directly into NATO's naval formation at an altitude of only 30 meters above the sea. Sonic booms echoed like thunder directly over the heads of the Estonian sailors, creating extreme psychological pressure. Russia was implementing its mobile anti-access/area denial tactic. So it was using military firepower to encircle a smuggling target. Yet diplomatically, Moscow could still claim it was merely a routine exercise in international waters. On the Baltic Spirit's deck, the refueling process was entering its final 15 minutes. To protect the ship from long-range surveillance devices, Russia deployed a digital decoy tactic. A series of autonomous buoys, equipped with corner reflectors, were deployed into the water. Immediately on NATO's radar screens, dozens of identical radar signatures appeared, scattering in all directions like a school of fish, replacing the original Baltic Spirit target. Identifying the true cargo ship amidst this electronic labyrinth became an impossible task for conventional guidance systems. With 15 minutes remaining, Russia believed it had won hands down. The Russians believed the US Navy had accepted defeat as the P-8 continued to circle remotely. But they did not expect that the very aggression and activation of the Submarine entire fire control radar system would provide the last pieces of data the United States was waiting for. The breaking point of Russia's entire defense system was carefully stored in the American aircraft's processor. The Silent Hammer Protocol, a stealth strike aimed directly at the enemy's heart without using a single bullet, was then beginning to reveal itself. At 2:52, as the frigate Submarine worked to maintain its lock on the P-8 Poseidon, the US Navy began to activate its strike. It targeted neither the ship's hull nor its weapons, but the very data stream Russia used to protect itself. The entirety of the Podlet K system's frequency jamming and its frequency hopping algorithms. The P-8 aircraft began transmitting an extremely short synchronization signal, precisely matching the pulse rate of the Podlet K system aboard the Baltic Spirit. The surprise began with the Russian squadron's positioning system. Thanks to a flaw in the connection protocol between the frigate Submarine and the merchant vessel Baltic Spirit, the US Navy executed a high-level spoofing technique. The United States silently altered the Russian GLONASS data with a delay of only a few milliseconds. As a result, the Subrazitelny's autopilot system believed it was approximately 3.7 kilometers from the Baltic Spirit, when in reality, the two ships were on a collision course. Russia's display of firepower had inadvertently created an electronic corridor, allowing the United States to infiltrate the heart of the autopilot system without leaving a trace. Simultaneously beneath the surface, the American submarine USS New Jersey, SSN 796, began its operation. It deployed a device called an acoustic logic bomb. This device emitted a special frequency band, precisely mimicking the control signals of the fiber optic cable Russia used to operate its underwater drones. The drones suddenly received a false command, automatically retracted their polymer nets, and sharply turned around, tangling themselves in the propellers of the concealed Kilo submarine. The culmination of this intellectual chess game lay in the refueling process. The US Navy used an infrared laser to directly illuminate the pressure sensor of the 30.5 centimeter fuel hose. And this laser beam did not cause a fire, but it created a physical phenomenon called thermal spoofing, making the Baltic Spirit's pump control system believe that pressure was skyrocketing to the point of explosion. In accordance with Russia's absolute safety protocol, aimed at preventing an environmental catastrophe, the entire fuel pumping system was immediately locked down by an automatic emergency stop command. In just 120 seconds, whilst the US Navy had turned Russia's entire advantage into scrap metal without firing a single shot, the Kilo submarine was immobilized by its own drone, the frigate Subrazitelny lost its positioning, and the Baltic Spirit's refueling process was interrupted by its own safety system. Russia fell into a state of complete technical paralysis, while its radars continued to report that everything was normal. It was then that the United States paved the way for the final stage of coercive action, for which Russia no longer had any tools to obstruct or deny. At 3:04, a collision alarm blared aboard the frigate Subrazitelny. The spoofed GLONASS system caused the warship to race directly towards the Baltic Spirit at approximately 52 kilometers per hour. The distance was now only 300 meters. The Russian captain was forced to cut electronic systems and execute a sharp manual turn, listing the ship by 30 degrees and narrowly avoiding a catastrophic collision. Beneath the sea, the Kilo submarine was immobilized by its own drones, which had tangled its propellers. The overloaded engines created a sonar signature that resonated throughout the Gulf of Finland, making it an obvious target. The American submarine USS New Jersey immediately positioned itself directly above the Kilo, transmitting a sonar message demanding the other vessel surface to avoid a catastrophic leak. On the Baltic Spirit's deck, American underwater drones approached the hull, using penetrating ultrasonic sensors and live-streaming images of missile components inside the containers on an unencrypted international frequency. Russia then completely lost any possibility of plausible deniability. Su-30 SM fighters dived to low altitude to destroy the evidence with their firepower, but were immediately locked on by the fire control radar of a NATO F-35B squadron. The two superpowers stood on the brink of total war, directly above a diesel powder keg. Russia faced a choice: attack to cover its tracks and face destruction, or accept retreat and lose the cargo. At 3:15, the Kilo submarine was forced to surface, its propellers out of action, exposing its illegal military presence protecting a smuggling vessel. The escort vessel, Subrazitelny, lost control and was forced to withdraw by approximately 1.85 kilometers, while Estonian special forces approached the Baltic Spirit under the protection of the US Navy. Not a single shot had been fired, yet Russia's entire defense system, from long-range capabilities to electronic encryption, had been neutralized by the Silent Hammer protocol. The operation concluded at dawn. Russia withdrew its forces to Kaliningrad, masking its failure with a statement claiming the ship had encountered technical problems. The Baltic Spirit was escorted to Tallinn, and 40 containers of military components were confiscated. The US Navy discreetly retrieved its electronic warfare equipment, without issuing any declarations of victory. The Ghost Fleet had not disappeared, but their source code and operational methods had been fully decrypted by the United States. The war had not ended with explosives, but with the demonstration of America's ability to remotely control its adversaries' weapons. The battle in the Baltic concluded, giving way to a new period of calm, where the parties began to prepare for the next secret confrontation beneath the Arctic.